The economies of the North and South. At the beginning of the 1700s, most products were made by hand. The U.S. needed to change, and in the mid-1700s they did. This period of rapid growth in using machines for production is known as the Industrial Revolution. At the time, the U.S. wasn't very skilled at mechanics. A British mechanic named Samuel Slater opened mills that could produce cotton threads effectively. However, he had trouble finding people to work in his mills. He solved this by hiring families and dividing factory work into simple tasks known as the Rhode Island system. In the late 1790s, the U.S. government worried about a possible war with France, so it wanted more muskets for the war. In 1798, inventor Eli Whitney mass-produced guns for the U.S. government using water-powered machinery. Whitney also came up with the idea of interchangeable parts. However, manufacturing grew slowly. Secretary of the Treasury Albert Gallatin believed that not many factories were being built because farming was attractive, the price of labor was high, and there was little made in factories. Luckily, the War of 1812 made Americans realize that they needed to rely more on themselves. They began to buy items from American manufacturers. Francis Cabot Lowell, a businessman from New England, developed a different approach to mill systems. It was called the Lowell system and was based on water-powered textile mills that employed young unmarried women from local farms. The Rhode Island system was different because it hired full families to do the work. For females, mill life was hard. They worked for 12 hours, everything was scheduled, and there were many health problems. A mill worker named Sarah G. Bagley took action. She founded the Lowell Female Labor Reform Association in 1844. The organization passed pamphlets and circulated petitions which later allowed for a 10-hour workday instead of 12. In 1803, Robert Fulton, an American, tested his first steamboat design. Several years later, he tested the Clermont, a full-size commercial steamboat. The steamboat was well suited for river travel because it could travel upriver and didn't use wind power. Many people started to demand steamboats because of Fulton's Clermont. In 1830, Peter Cooper built a small, powerful locomotive called the Tom Thumb. He raised the engine and railroad fever began to spread despite his loss. Soon railroads were built and people and goods arrived to different places on time. The railroad, however, faced challenges like flying off the tracks, which could cause accidents. Many mills were water-powered, which meant that many mills had to be next to or near streams. With steam power, they could be built anywhere. Even more, since railroads were transporting people to cities, many mills moved to near cities to get more workers. In 1792, a Georgia plantation worker, Catherine Green, owned a plantation where workers used cotton gin, which removed seeds from long staple cotton. The cotton gin was so successful that the growing demand for slaves led to an increase in the slave trade within the U.S. Southerner Hinton Rowan Helper tried to encourage Southerners to create factories and mills. Most Southerners didn't want to because of the low cost for slaves and the high profit they could make. They also didn't want to compete with the North in England. The social status of planters and yeomen differed. The yeomen owned small farms with not many slaves, while planters had more than 20 slaves with lots of land. Most slaves were not treated correctly. One slave named Solomon Northup became a free African American and was then kidnapped. He spent 12 years as a slave and proved his identity for his release. Slaveholders controlled slaves by punishing them in front of the others. Planters, however, offered food or better living conditions for them. A slave named Nat Turner grew furious because of slavery. He planned an attack on all slaveholders known as the Nat Turner's Rebellion, which was the most violent slave revolt in the U.S. It, however, toughened slave codes. Enslaved parents passed down family histories and African customs and traditions to ensure their children won't forget their heritage.
Created using Powtoon.